Hello. I didn't want to wait until Monday, so here we are in Dawntrail. I don't know what else to say beyond that. But we're here. We're at level 93 in the main story, but before I do that, I want to go get some Aether currents. I should be able to unlock flight in one area, at least. And there might be some interesting knowledge to gain from those quests. Who can say? So yeah, it's not this area. I'm not used to which area is which yet. Hello, welcome. But there should be some Aether current quests to do in this area. Zamauka. Yep. Some of these might be like full quest lines, but I don't know exactly how much of that I'm gonna do. There's also Corn Quest lurking here, but that's for later. Hello, Rite of the Winds Chosen. Oho Kali, Sukro. Of course I know your name. Who isn't familiar with Wuklamat's companions? Not to mention your friends can't seem to go a moment without mentioning you. I'm Lanu Hanu, and I have the honor of being the Wind's Chosen. It is my feathers which adorn the festival float. I feel the wind has guided you to me for a reason. As a visitor to our village who has fast become an honored friend, I would offer you a chance to strengthen our bonds. Hold on. The eternal plague of there has to be fan noise in the background. Perhaps you're familiar with the Lance Guard. It is customary among the Winds Chosen to save their molted feathers and present them to these brave protectors as gifts every few years. At this very moment, one of their number is making their way to Okanu to receive our offering. But there's much more to it than just a simple delivery, and I think you'd be interested in taking part. It would deepen your understanding of our ways, and perhaps you and this member of the Lance Guard will become fast friends. I would start with a small task, if you're willing. Nahanche is the name of our guest, and he was due to arrive some time ago. I fear he may be lost. Could you search the road for him? I'll stay behind in case he arrives here at all. After all, rather. I wonder if sometime I should get like an ultra super high quality, extra super professional turbo microphone. Just for me. Probably unnecessary, but still. You're looking for me? If you're not a Hanu Hanu, unless you're molting something awful. Nah, I can't. Ah, so that's the way of it. Well, now that you've found me, I suppose I better get on with it. Sorry for my lack of enthusiasm. I joined the Lance Guard hoping I could bust some skulls, slaughter some beasts, you know, use these muscles of mine. But for my first assignment, I'm lugging crates of supplies around. It's not exactly what I had in mind. Yeah, I suppose complaining won't get this done any faster. Let's go meet this Lanu Hanu then. Nahanche, are you the sort of person who skips cutscenes to get right to the trials? I bet you are. I'm on to you. No, I thought I was just coming here to pick up some feathers. My superiors didn't say anything about helping someone. You found him! Now we can begin. Before the gift of feathers is to be bestowed, there are proper steps that must be taken. Firstly, I bid the warmest of welcomes to Nahanche. As the Wind's Chosen, it is my solemn duty to show you what sights our humble village has to offer. As one of the Landsguard, it behooves you to become familiar with all corners of the continent, yes? Then come with me to the center of Okanu, where you can behold the entire village at once. Suscrow. Indeed. I think logically what I should probably do is, even if I'm interested in this entire questline, I should get all the ether currents first so I can fly around during it. Maybe. Depending on like how involved it actually is, of course. Take it all in. This is Okanu. As you can see, our homes are made from wood and reeds, both of which the forest blesses us with in abundance. But nature's blessings are to be treated with care, for dry reeds can easily catch flame. And if they do, we risk setting our entire village alight. Building waterways through Okanu is a way to protect us from such incidents, but aquatic beasts can travel them as well. And when these beasts become too great in number, we beseech the Landsguard to call them. Do you now? I always thought hunting duty was just a way to keep us sharp. While I'm here, I'll make sure nothing troubles your home. All of Okanu would thank you. And now for the reason you came. The feathers of the Wind's Chosen. They're used to adorn the equipment worn by the Landsguard. The design evokes the image of Kijaihi, the great bird revered by all Hanuhanu. The feathers give it a touch of authenticity that make the soldiers appear all the fiercer. Every soldier's outfit is designed according to their profession, and each feather must undergo an elaborate process of dyeing and oiling to meet the Landsguard's varied needs. So without further ado, let us begin. I first ask that you come meet me at the gate to the southeast. Fine. I should warn you, I'm not known for my delicate hands. That went about as well as expected. Could you stay behind for a moment, Sucro? I would like to hear your opinion of Nahanche. He's not the most motivated person. He really doesn't want to be here, or ... He doesn't seem like the most motivated person. I have the same impression. Truth be told, his attitude is the same as every Landsguard troop who comes to receive this gift, and we're meant to fix it. Gasp. Consider this a rite of passage of sorts. The Landsguard sends us troops whose rough edges want for polish, and the tasks we set before them serve as a whetstone. Over the course of our work, they gain a great insight into the history and meaning behind this exchange of gifts. Soldiers with a tangible bond to their charge will protect it all the more staunchly. In recent days, however, even our treasure trove of knowledge hasn't been enough to rouse the spirits of some. But working alongside someone as capable as you, Nahanche may find the extra motivation he needs. Now then, let us proceed to the southeastern gate, and while this goes without saying, keep this little conversation between us a secret. We'll speak later, Corn. The feathers we send the Landsguard are for decorative purposes, and since they can lay untouched for quite some time, they aren't fit for use on the float. What did I do to deserve this? Now I know why my superiors were snickering behind my back as I departed. The Hanu might think this bird god is worth all this trouble, but I just want to get it over with. Yeah, I think I'll get flight and then go back to that. Because that is interesting. You're Uklamat's companion, aren't you? Kijahi smiles upon me. I had hoped the Great Bird would guide one of the village's saviors to me. You see, the time has come for us to make our customary offerings to Kishahi. It is a ceremony we hold dear, and I'd invite you to participate as an honored guest. Nod. You'll join us then. Oh, that makes me so happy my feathers are standing up straight. The traditional offering is a fruit that grows to the southwest, and they must be so ripe that they fall into the earth. Gather 3 and deliver them to Lanuhali at the shrine. Sucro, you must collect the fruit. Oh, it's over here. Yeah, I was expecting an area marker or something for some reason. It's a little unusual for them to mark the fruits in this way, honestly. Oh, we learn about the Chow Garden fruit. Okay. Just machinist things. I'm machinist right now, arbitrarily. Trying to get some experience on like all of the roles, I guess. While I'm doing side stuff. Because the main story should cover tank if I stick with Paladin. Hello! Welcome! Welcome all raiders. I will admit that part of why I decided to stream right now, other than wanting to see more of the game, was because I figured you could probably raid me if I did. This was all part of my plan. But hello, welcome. This is Final Fantasy XIV's latest expansion, Dawntrail. I'm fairly early in the main story, but right now I'm doing some Aether current stuff in an area that I've been through already. Currently, just gathering the currents so that I can fly, but then I might continue some of the side quest stuff. But hello, welcome. You didn't miss anything really yet. I started 2 of the Aether current side quests in, Kazamuuka. I don't have the area names memorized yet. But yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for the raid. I think you say even in the rain, but I think I would even say especially in the rain. Because like the rain effects in the graphics update, very powerful. Look at how shiny stuff is in the rain and all that. You know, this is probably a thing that's been the case for a while, but I didn't even think to like check if the rain was cut off by roofs and whatnot. Seems to be though. Oh, hello. To what do I owe this honor? Fruit. Ah, Kijahi will be most satisfied with these. Today you are more than an honored guest. You are the very heart of the ceremony. After your efforts to bring Ihihana back to us, Kijahi is doubtless overjoyed to see you in this role. The fruit shall bear a powerful blessing indeed. Now you must take the previous offering back whence you came. Deliver the blessed fruit to Anu Hanu, and the ceremony will be complete. Go with haste. Okay, I'll go with haste and 100 coins. Coins, the well-known currency name for Final Fantasy. Coins. Everyone is always spending these. Welcome back. Was Lanuhali impressed with your offering? Yes, I can feel Kishahi's grace emanating from these. Thus the ceremony is complete. The younger Hanuhanu clamored to participate in this rite, you know. It's said that the fruit offered to Kishahi becomes imbued with its divine spirit, and all who carry them shall be blessed with great luck. Surely you will be too. Although you traveled far, I hope you feel enriched by the experience. Go with our gratitude, and may the wings of Kishahi sweep ill fortune from your path. So there's a quest to continue over here that started with an Aether current, but there's also 2 to grab in Earthenshire. So gonna unlock Flight first, and then maybe continue some of the storylines. Because that's a good way to start stuff, I think. Danger Straits! Danger Straits! Vandervalk's Twinkle Crafter has gone missing! Vandervalk asks all around the village, and some say he went to pay a visit to the Imperius, the giant's prey place. But prey place is a danger place, full of friend-munching fiends. You are a fighter, are you not? Will you swordlend for Vandervalk and save her dear Twinkle Crafter from certain doom? I sure heckin' will. More like Gunland, but you know, whatever. By the way, as of level 92, Machinist has finally lost all traces of shoot normal gun, except for the auto attack. Previously, the last vestiges of shoot gun normally as a button was the move Gauss Round, but it has upgraded to double check. You're looking for a Twinkle Crafter? That's me, most likely. I'm one of the Moblin's contracted artisans, specializing in jewelry making. Vendervalk was concerned for my safety, you say? How kind of her to send me my own personal guard. I've ever been fascinated by the unique visual language of the Yakui, you see. I often visit this place to bask in its grand, imposing glory. Yeah, I'm trying to balance experience a little bit by doing side stuff with other jobs. MSQ is still going to be Paladin for right now. Yet I've never once taken a step beyond this point. The beasts that lurk within are far too dangerous to risk delving any further. But with you at my side, I can finally make a detailed study of the rest of the ruins. Such as what remains of them, of course. 500 years have come and gone since the giants returned to their ancestral lands, and they've not been kind to the creations they left behind. Yet some of the larger structures still remain, this impressive gate for one. They say the Yakui towered yalms above even the tallest Jabral, but I wonder if their architecture might have played some part in exaggerating those tales, its sheer sense of scale serving to inflate the giant's own. But enough speculation, let us press on. We have much to discover. It's interesting that people have thoughts and legends and stuff about the Yakui when there isn't really that much stopping you aside from the wildlife from wandering over here and going to see them for yourself. They didn't seem to mind when we wandered into their village, at least not yet. But yeah, normal gun has become this. And also Ricochet is checkmate. So instead of shooting a gun, my 2 OGCDs are now throwing robot orbs that launch laser beams. Meaning that literally my only normal gunshot is, well, my auto attack. Heat Blast also changed to Blazing Shot in this expansion. So that also got a more ridiculous animation. A little bit. Allow me to demonstrate. First of all. So Sucro now does like a 360 every time she uses this. So I guess I have a 360 no scope button. I would...
Oh heck, 360 degrees no scope.
I would say they do... They're going... Like they've... I guess they started as more gunslinger, but over time they've gradually become more and more like gadgeteer. So yeah, I would say that they are getting less gunslinger over time. Let's go into Explorer mode. And I can show you all the machinist buttons I currently have more clearly. At level 92. So yeah, this is the only normal gunshot that still exists. As before, the basic combo is still ridiculous flips because of what it was adapted from. And then we still have drill, chainsaw, air anchor. The two OGCDs are now double check, and checkmate, which don't involve guns anymore. And we still got flamethrower for some reason, etc. Now, there are still two machinist buttons I don't have yet at 92. Chainsaw is going to get a follow-up called Excavator. And then the final thing is Full Metal Field, I think is the name of it. Where Sucro becomes the Heavy Arms Gundam, to my understanding. I say this as someone who doesn't have a lot of Gundam knowledge, but I did see immediate comparisons to that. I think you just wield two miniguns and a bunch of missile launchers for that move. Pillars of stone overlooking the nave. Fascinating, isn't it? The simple combination of geometric shapes naturally draws one's eyes to the center, all the while maintaining a delicate balance. As the sun traversed the sky, so too would the shadows of the towers above paint patterns on the ground below. And not just any patterns, oh no, calculations. Every stone cut and placed with mathematical precision, divining the movement of the stars and the changing of the seasons. A triumph of both form and function, true artistry. But wait, what's that over there by the cliff's edge? Quickly, with me. But yeah, earlier Machinist is definitely more gunslinger. Over time, like, all of your gunshots evolve into no longer being gunshots, and it's a little silly. One recurring thing that people have said about this game, I'm not sure how many hold this opinion, but one opinion I've seen repeatedly is people who, like, wish Bard was more Archer and less music. And, like, I think similarly, I've seen people saying they wish Machinist was more Gunslinger and less Gadgeteer or whatever. And, like, now that we have Viper, which is kind of like if Rogue stayed more of like a thief type thing instead of going into ninja, I'd say there's like a non-zero chance of getting more of like an archer or gunner type of character class later on down the line. Like, something I thought of the other day is maybe they could have a character that uses crossbows, for example, because that's a weapon type that's not really covered. Machinist technically has an auto crossbow, but that's not quite the same. I think that'd be neat. I feel like in 8.0, if they add new classes, or jobs rather, There's a decent chance of one of them being range DPS, and then the other's probably like tank. Just based on patterns. But it would also make sense if they didn't add any new jobs in 8.0, because they've stated they're going to try and like make the existing ones more unique in 8.0. Thank you, and forgive me for racing ahead like that. I was so absorbed in examining every ilm of this place, I clean forgot the reason I'd never done so before. But if anything is worth risking one's life for, it's surely this. Why, just look at this tower. It's a work of art. To the untrained eye, it might appear little more than a pile of stone, but look at how each brick is cut and positioned perfectly to align with its neighbors, and not a drop of mortar to hold them in place. The engravings, too, surely have some religious significance. They certainly inspire reverence in me. Yes, inspiring reverence, that's the thing. Why else would the giants build their temple upon the cliff top, if not to make daily proof of their predominance over those who dwelled on the plains below? In the plains below. Those who were beneath them in every way. One cannot help but admire them. That their creations should awe and exhilarate us even now, centuries since they've been gone. Thank you, my friend. My passion for jewelry craft had been cooling of late, but now I'm positively burning with inspiration. The Yakhui's creations can echo through the ages, then so can mine, to Earthenshire and eternity. I don't think they'll ever do like a summoner scholar thing again, but it would be interesting if they did. At this point, it would probably also make sense, if they separated summoner and scholar eventually. I suppose they could do another thing like that, but there's been no indication that they'd consider it, I think. And Summoner and Scholar both have oddities because of being connected. So... Big thanks for bringing the Twinkle Crafter back to us. Not only is he safe and well, but full of mind fruit too. He says that he found it in the giant's prey place. This need for mind fruit is common among the Potsworn. Some try to find it in history, some in nature, some even in firewater. It is our side of the pot pack to keep them well supplied with it, a duty that is a constant source of brain pain. But oh, the ideas they come up with when they have it, such fresh thinking. Bendavok can't wait to see what our friendly Twinkle Crafter Wangle crafts next. And now the last Aether current. Maybe. A crossbow is kind of like something between a gun and a bow after all. All good pot pacts must come to an end. You are Supra, are you not? She who has been strength lending to Wuklamat. But Muvamuk asks that you strength lend her in turn? The matter is this, Muvamuk's craft hand is to retire after long use. He lip-slips that he intends to fancy craft one last masterpiece before he does so, but for this he needs the hand help of a strange face to the village. Anfroy is his name. He's always very murky-worded with his requests, so Muvamuk is not sure what hand help he needs. But if you could exchange tongue flaps with him, she would be very, very happy, feels. I thought that was an Aether current for a second. Even though I've already gathered them all. Yes, I'm on, Froy. Do I know... Wait, aren't you the friend of the Third Promise? The adventurer from across the water who was asking about the pot pacts. Ah, I see. Movamuk sent you. I only said I needed the help of a stranger to Earthenshire. Trust her to pick an honest-to-goodness hero. The task I have for you is but a trifling one. It's very near and dear to my heart. I want you to find out all you can about Movamuk. Questioning Hedel. There's nothing untoward about it, I assure you. I'm interested in what she's interested in. Her hobbies, her likes and dislikes, what she holds dear, and so forth. But for certain reasons that I'll share with you later, she can't know this. We've been working together for decades, but now as my pot pact is about to end, I find that I know next to nothing about her. And perhaps others who work closely with the Moblins might. Movamuk and Envoy? Yes, I know the pair well. She's famously very protective of him, sometimes even rejecting his patron's orders outright. It's not that she thinks him unequal to the tasks, you understand. Quite the opposite, in fact. She knows how exacting his standards are, and how discontented he would be if his work failed to meet them. So anytime a patron attempts to have him lower his standards or design something differently to how he judges best, Movamuk will always leap to his defense. As for what she enjoys, well, her delight in Anfroy's creations has not dulled at all in the years they worked together. I should think she likes nothing more. What does Movamuk value most? Her potsworn, of course. Any mobby who says otherwise is a fib speaker. She likes the treasure he gave her heart side at all times. Or she keeps the treasure he gave to her heart side at all times, or so she once lip-slipped to Tarnotic. He has the flimsy thought what this treasure might be, but whatever it is, it's sure proof of the friend bond between them. I love mobby speak. And Gabi speak. Uptender wants to know what brain tickles Movamuk. That's an easy ask. Movamuk never lip-flaps about anything other than her potsworn, Anfroy. She says he's just as good a tricksy crafter as he is a crafty tricker, always playing crafty tricks. One day, Anfroy draws little arrows around the village, showing potsworn how to leave Earthenshire without Helpan's eye catching them. Many lap-minded pot friends follow the arrows and leave for secret hiding place in the woods. Hobbies are frighty fields over disappearing potsworn. Potsworn come back all glitter teeth, but Hellpants are steamiers. All except Movamuk. She goes around the village saying guilt words to every mobby for Anfoy's sneaky trick. Deep heart though, it is clear she is nothing but happy feels to have him back. Ah, you're back. So what did you find out? Ah, she really thinks that much of me. They say that Moblin Helphands love nothing more than helping their charges, and it seems it's true. Though it wouldn't hurt for her to show it a little more often. And that's not the only thing you learned, and I thank you for it. You've given me exactly what I need, so I suppose it's about time I told you what I need it for. The truth is... Is Sucrose still hard at hand helping? I already forgot the Movamuk voice I gave. Yes, she is, so thank you for not bothering us. You do remember that I specifically asked you to leave me be until my work was complete? Questioning head tilt. Always such angry words. Movamuk means no bother. Just needs to do daily mob duty, sharpening tools until they sparkle shine. And I'm telling you that I don't need you to. Not now, anyway. I'm almost retired. All of my commissions are already dealt with. Until the end day of the Pot Pact, Movamuk will uphold her pact part. It is her duty as help hand. Why do you always have to be so... I'm sorry, Movamuk, but I'm going to have to put my foot down. I expressly forbid you from touching my tools until my work with Sucro is finished. Then Movamuk will do as Onfroy asks, though it makes her shamefaced. She will hand turn to other duties. If Onfroy needs her, he has only to hail call. I wish I didn't have to do that, but I'll be needing every one of those tools if I'm to achieve my aim. That aim being to make a farewell present for Movamuk. Gasp. Smile. In all the years I've been working here, she's been my guardian angel, answering my every prayer before it even makes it to my lips. Even in these recent times when the help hands have grown too few for the number of potsworn, her service hasn't lapsed in ilm. Now that my service is coming to an end, I wanted to do something just for her, to thank her for everything she's done for me. Yet, despite her knowing me better than I do myself, I discovered that I didn't really know anything about her at all. I tried to speak with her, to learn what really makes her tick, but she always brushed me off. Said that her only wish as a humble help hand was to see my wishes realized. It got me thinking, perhaps she and the other moblins might be more willing to open up to someone who wasn't bound by the Pot Pact. Someone like you, and by all the gods the plan worked. I have an idea for her present now. All that remains is to craft it, but without Movamuk's help. That might be a little more difficult than usual. If you'd be willing to play help hand a little longer, I'd make it worth your while. And now we should have flight. Yay! So I could continue either of these storylines now. I will also mention, while we're here, that having done various other side quests in this region, that one place, like the, where all the people who, like, left Earthenshire went, one of the side quests here was to deliver stuff from them, or to them in secret, because one of the moblins still wanted to support their endeavors. Apparently the moblins feel a lot of shame about not being able to provide for these people, and so on. So there was a little bit of lore about that location. Wherever that is. The cracked cistern, that's where it is. It's over there. So there was a bit of extra lore about all that. But it wasn't as important as it seemed overall. So, should I continue these now? Should I continue the MSQ instead? I'm not sure. But we can fly around a little bit. See the sights. Admire the Dawntrail map. I love to see all the colorful trees and nature and stuff from this angle. Oops, I flew too hard. I don't know if there's anywhere in this area that I can go, that I couldn't go without flight. Because I was able to map the entire area without flight. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some, like, vistas and whatnot that I could only access reasonably with flight. I guess we can observe the broken staircase in greater detail. No, this is... I know I mapped it because I got the achievement for doing so. This is just a blank area. What do you all think regarding the Aether Current side quests, or quest lines, versus continuing the story now? Oh, that might be... This is a spot I couldn't go, probably. This tiny little isolated piece of land. Okay, maybe I could have made it here. And there's not really anything here, but still. Okay, it doesn't really seem like there's anywhere of note that is flight only. I don't think there are that many maps that have such a place anyway, but... This place is very pretty. Maybe I'll just continue the main story now. Yeah, I think it was Stormblood that I'm thinking of where most of them were. Speaking of places that look important, I guess there's a fate here. Full of moles. We made a really important looking area, and then we put a bunch of moles on it. Hello, welcome. I was just doing some Aether Current stuff in this area to unlock flight. And I decided that I think I'd rather continue the main story than... Okay, wait, here's a thing I probably couldn't access on foot, but it's... Again, it's not very much. There might be a thing over here too, I don't know. I'm just looking around because it's a pretty location. But yeah, I've decided that I think instead of continuing the side quests that gave Aether Currents at the start of them, I'll just continue the main story. I may or may not even do those side quest chains like off camera. 'Cause I don't need to do everything on camera all the time. Oh. I could though, I don't know. It depends on whether or not people are interested in seeing it. I will do all of the corn side quests on camera sometime though, because that's probably... I don't know, corn is funny. People will probably want to observe the corn. Anyway. Last time on the main story, we got here. I've also already done the Aether Current side quests over here. So, the Aether Currents and Aether Current side quests over here should also give me flight in Urkapacha. So I'll probably do the starts of those as they appear. But yeah. We got to Warlar's Echo. And we looked around for a while, but we haven't really started the MSQ that's actually taking place here. So, back to Paladin, and I guess it's time to do that. Everything here is giant-sized, but that structure in the back is on a different scale altogether. Temple of some kind, mayhap? Chilly air, stout stone construction. If I squint a bit, I might think I was an Ishgard for a moment. There aren't that many similarities, but alright. Thank the gods, they have an aetherite. I don't fancy the idea of trudging up that mountain trail a second time. Oh yeah, that's a good point. I knew the path led here, but I've never set foot in this village myself. As I mentioned earlier, it's interesting that people like mythologize the Yakui so much, and yet you can technically just walk up to their village and they seem pretty chill about it. But anyway. I think I'm getting used to the air up here. So this is the place from the Lay of Proof where Papa met with the Yakui. And that must be them. I don't think I've ever actually seen one outside of a picture. So it is for most Turali. The giants rarely visit the lowlands. Here in their mountain fastness, they tend to the solemn duty that they pledge to undertake in their pact with the Dawn Servant. To watch over the Tirol Vidral Valley Garmanda and maintain its prison within their temple. Ah yes, Wuklamat told us about the Tirol Vidral. Creatures that live for far longer than normal and awaken to strange powers. Indeed, yet even among those anomalies, Valley Garmanda is unrivaled in strength. It has endured for centuries, bringing catastrophe each time it emerges from its lair. As you learned in the Lay of Ice, it was Gulul Jaja who at last managed to imprison the beast, and it has lain dormant in the temple ever since. Good question. It's said the building still bears a gaping hole in its ceiling from when Valley Garmanda was lured inside by Gulul Jaja's final ploy. I'd like to see this strongest of all Tirol Vidral. I wonder what it was like to fight it. Warlar's Echo was where both the Lay of Proof and the Lay of Ice took place. But does this not suggest we'll be facing 2 feats this time? That's a question we can ask the Elector once we find him. Or maybe we should flush out Bakul Jaja first so I can beat my keystone out of him. We should probably figure out the Elector here first. I suppose we do still have 4 keystones to earn, and no matter what we do, the contest will pit us against him sooner or later. 2 feats like the ones we used to walk here. Yeah, exactly. Alright, let's seek out the Elector. And I suggest we pay a visit to Carriorza the Gracious, or so their temple is called. The moblins told me that High Luminary Gerfurler is to be found there. If we are to ask someone for information, then he seems a wise choice. That's true too. I kind of wish that they had a repair all, like, really all of everything button. Yeah, the option that's just like, let's just go beat up the jerk is also fun, but I assume like Aaronville or someone would object to such a thing. We don't need permission to enter the temple, but I expect it won't be a problem for the third promise. While this is certainly an impressive building, it doesn't seem the sort of structure one would build to hold a Tural Vidral. The temple guards have been watching us most intently. One does not stroll freely into Valagarmanda's prison, it seems. Is it taboo to request entrance to the temple, do you think? God, I hope so. Let's see if I can convince the guards to let us through. I am Muklamat, third promise of Tuliolol, and I seek your elector for the right of succession. May I speak with Gerfurler? The High Luminary has granted admittance to the claimants. You may enter. Huh, that was easier than expected. In we go then. When you have, do you think like with Bakul Jaja, you know the thing in cartoons where someone will like walk up behind two guys and like bonk their heads together to knock them both out? Could you just do that with Bakul Jaja? Because he's got two heads. Is that his weak point? Would that work? Gods, is that? Aye, Paragarmanda. Look, it's Final Fantasy VI. Ice included in everything. Welcome. Hi, Luminary Gerfurler. Shake head. He is not here at present. I am Luminary Zermerwer. This is the Skyruin, Valagarmanda. It is, the Tural Vidral whose name has evoked terror since time immemorial. Even my people, once conquerors of all beneath the sun, were as brittle leaves before Valagarmanda's tempestuous power. High Luminary Gerfurler is a notorious monster from 11. That's a cool detail. When the Skyruin descended upon Urkupacha 8 decades ago, the casualties were staggering. Had Golul Jaja and his companions not intervened, we would have been slaughtered to the last. Their titanic battle with Valagarmanda raged for 10 days and 10 nights. So we've got a white mage here. We've got a bard or archer. Someone appears to be holding a sword in a paladin or gladiator stance. Probably a black mage there, unless that's another white mage. As their foe fought on tireless and relentless, our heroes were pushed beyond the limits of their endurance. Thus did the head of reason concoct a desperate plan. Galul Jaja tricked the Sky Ruin into losing control of its own ice magics, causing the unwitting Tural Vidral to encase itself in frozen ether. And it's been like that ever since. Nice work, Papa. But what happens if the ice ever melts? That same question looms large in our minds, for the magic sustaining this prison grow weaker with each passing year. Valigarmanda commands powers of fire and lightning and ice. Some believe that the violence of the recent storm was the result of those energies slipping free. That would make sense, actually. That raging tempest from Valigarmanda? Setting future worries aside, you are come to attempt the feat of proof, yes? The High Luminary, chosen elector of the Dawn Serpent, has left me with instructions for all aspiring claimants. You are to scour our forbidding mountains and find the waiting Gerfurler. That is to be your challenge. Hide and seek, extreme. Got it. Ah, so the search itself is the feat. You've already spoken with my brothers, I take it? I have. Their expeditions are underway. Then we'd better pick up the pace. Nod. Aye, but we'll need a direction to search in first. Let's see what hints we can gather from the villagers. Nod. Nod. One of the bingo squares could have been like more than 3 nods in a row, but that already would have been checked off. As large as the Yakui are, seeking blindly for one in the expanse of these mountains would be an exercise in futility. We need more information. I sense the recent expulsion of a great deal of ether from Valigarmanda's prison. The ice will hold for but a few years more, I fear. Tural sound an awful lot like the auspices of the Far East. Are they the same thing under a different name, do you think? People keep reaching this exact same conclusion, and it's kind of interesting that they're doing that. I haven't encountered many extraordinary creatures in Eorzea and elsewhere, but long has it been since I've felt such an overwhelming power or presence, like 1,000 dagger points pricking at my skin. I added an extra word or two there. But yeah, it came up in the Viper quests, it came up at some other point, and it came up just now. 3 people have separately made the comparison. Oh, you also thought that? That's funny. Gods, Valigarmanda is enormous. I know Papa had friends with him, but it's incredible he could hold his own against that thing. Should its prison ever fail, though, we can't expect the old guard to come running. It'll be up to us to save the day. Wait, do I need a ring? I sure do. I should open this. I don't trust the portraits. If we want to pass the peat, it looks like we've got more climbing ahead of us. As we've just been informed, the feat of proof requires us to seek the High Luminary Gerfurler somewhere upon these mountains. However, if earlier feats are any indication, we must assume the challenge precludes the Yakoi from answering our questions in a straightforward manner. Thus, I would ask that you pay close attention while attempting to divine Gerfurler's whereabouts. Though the giants may not give us a precise location, there may be clues hidden within their words. Such is my theory, anyway. Let us see what we can discover. That is interesting. Unless Tsukomogami are exclusive to Authored, for whatever reason. I've always really liked the concept of Tsukomogami, and it's probably Toho as the main reason for this. The High Luminary? No, I've not seen him today. Now let me ask you a question. That Jabra who came out of the temple earlier, was that really the third promise? She seems rather unimposing. How is she meant to succeed the mighty Golul Jaja? Zoralja was far more impressive. He exudes the same sense of indomitable strength as his father. Is it basic of me to be like, one of the best Tsukomogami in Toho is Kagasa? She's like the most obvious one. Asking after the High Luminary as well, are you? I know not where to find him, but I do hope you have the opportunity to speak together. He's a great man with deep reverence for our traditions. These glyphs we carve for one, he affords them as much value as any treasure we possess. There are records of lives lived. Your arrival too I will etch into the stone, that the story of our meeting may endure for untold turnings of the sun. If you're curious about our ways, then I bid you visit Proof to the northwest of here. It's one of our grave sites. Go to Proof. The stones will help you understand my people. One of the other best Tsukomogami in Toho is Raiko. I just think she's cool, and she has a cool theme and a cool design. When you've finished asking around, we can meet back where we started. I guess my favorite Toho character is probably still Kagero, though I've changed from wolf to cat at some point. She's definitely one of them. I could talk about... Exactly, I could talk about Toho characters for a bit, probably. Atuliolan? No, you are from farther away than that, I think. As for the High Luminary, I can only guess where he might be. He's warder of the Sky Ruin, but also keeper of the sepulchres, and his duties often take him outside the village. As we receive few visitors, it's not often I speak to Raleigh. I am glad for the chance to keep in practice. Moko is very good. Something just occurred to me. A couple things just occurred to me. We were told that... First of all, we were told that not everyone here is well practiced in speaking Tirali, which is... Tirali, apparently, is its own language. So, and they were speaking it. Secondly, well, secondly, adjacent to that, how much does everyone in the party that doesn't have the echo understand everyone here? They've had no obvious issues so far. Thirdly, if we were to hear them without the echo, would they have slight errors in their speech due to, like, not, like, being out of practice with it or not having a lot of experience speaking the language? Is the echo, like, correcting their grammar and stuff in any way to make sure we understand it? And then, lastly and finally, if that is the case about the echo, do people only speak like Realm Reborn, like Amalja? Is the Realm Reborn Amalja speak being on purpose like the only reason that we heard it like that with the echo? There's a lot of things to think about that probably don't matter. The Scions are college educated and stuff. But yeah, I think it probably is mostly that they're underestimating their ability to speak the language well. This wall is covered in Yakui writing. I wonder what it says. Something like that, probably. The Yakui are bigger than I imagined. Side by side, they'd even make a Hanu look small. That's also a really interesting statement, Wuklamont, because everyone else thinks that they're way bigger than this. Like, legends make them seem taller than mountains and stuff. Yeah. That's sort of like what I meant when, like, they're speaking like that on purpose, which is why we still hear it like that with the echo. But it's probably not something that I'm intended to think about this much. First things first, was anyone able to coax forth a definite location for the High Luminary? I heard a location, but... as expected. What then of clues or other hints that might point us in the right direction? That could also be true. But we don't know exactly... Oh, that's because beavers are eldritch nightmares from beyond time and space, probably. So, you know... Guy from Final Fantasy II understood eldritch speech because he's a warlock. Don't worry about it. I heard that in addition to his usual duties, Gerfurler is also charged with keeping the graves. As did I. The Yakui's sepulchres appear to hold a special significance in their culture. But would it be appropriate for us outsiders to enter into their burial grounds? They even told me to go there, so I guess so. Proof, you say? And he encouraged you to visit this place yourself. Nod. Then let's go and take a look. Even if we don't find Gerfurler there, it will give us the chance to learn more about the Yakui. Nod. The gravesite is somewhere northwest of here. No, northwest of here? Well, we can leave that... We can leave from that side of the village for a start. Shall we? Nod. The way they like refer to the beavers, like the pixies and stuff, they do seem to genuinely fear them. And the game seems to like make it seem like beavers are a concerning entity in some way. So, by the way, I like went into this zone. I was like, maybe I'll look for ether currents over here before the stream. And I saw this like vista. I was like, I'm gonna wait until the stream to explore the region actually, because I might see cool stuff. In the Encyclopedia Eorzea volume that covers the first, beavers show up and their entry is covered in blood and burn marks. I'm sorry? Yeah, alright then. I can't believe that the next expansion is going to deal with the assault of the beavers from space. But yeah, I saw this view and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna actually wait and not look for ether currents in advance, because I don't want to like spoil the region for myself just finding funny wind orb. I want to see stuff for the first time on stream. The others have gone on ahead to proof, following the trail west. There are sharp drops everywhere, so we're all moving at our own pace. Some of us are not built for craggy terrain. I thought to get my bearings from up here first so I don't stumble off a cliff. Why don't you try catching up to Aaronville? He should be able to point you in the right direction. I am not terribly familiar with any terrain of this sort. I've lived in like suburbs for my entire life, so you know. The main terrain that I'm used to is flat. And maybe they left a tree here for once. I have not spent that much time in nature, all things considered. More accurately, the main terrain I'm used to is the room I'm in right now. Somewhat of a hermit, maybe. It's not quite mountain climbing, but these steep slopes are exhausting enough. Well, the suburbs aren't completely flat, but like they have like flat vibes. Does that make any sense? Nary order. Suburbs are the type of living space designed by like the villains that want to change the world into something of total law and order with zero chaos, known as the HOA. So what happened over here? I assume we're gonna learn about why there's a crater here. Sunken Stars is the location of something on the map over here. Yeah. Extremely Falling Star Beast location. These have the look of homes rather than graves, but it would seem long years have passed since anyone living resided here. Take a look at this crater. There is no wood, no trees, not even dried grass, and yet the ground still burns. This must be one of the scars left by Valagaramanda's rampage, as told by the saga. The Skyruin's fires are described as eternal, flames that can be quenched by neither storm nor time. And here I thought it was a literary embellishment. Ah, but now I've lost sight of Vuklamat. Proof is northwest along the main road, so hopefully she's still heading the right way. A world you cannot experience alone. Is that what her journey with the Dawn Servant showed her? Something that I too might find? Aaronville over here muttering mysteriously about what his deal is again. In this very incidental dialogue you could easily miss. He's never let slip who she was, but given the fact that the picture we saw of people fighting Valagarmanda had a rabbit in it that someone specifically drew attention to, I'm beginning to have my suspicions a little bit about what any of this means. We met with the Kui, and we're on a trail to try and find a specific one as the feat of the feat of proof. The battle music just abruptly increased in volume there. I want to look around more, though. What's over here? I wonder why they made it so that Paladin and Warrior's gap closers still do damage when the other two don't. I think they specifically said it was to reduce the busyness of like the burst phases of those two, because they were the busier tanks. But it does feel kind of weird for like half of the tanks to have gap closers that deal damage and the others to not. Especially because Paladin still gets their gap closer at level 74. I hope part of 8.0's reworking and adjusting of all the jobs is to adjust the levels at which they get things. There's gotta be an ether current over here, right? I think should just stun you when you do that. I think one of the jobs that most needs what levels they get stuff at reworked is White Mage, though. Under level 50, White Mage has like freaking nothing. TM. I don't need to fight everything, but everything keeps getting mad at me. I guess it's up there then, instead. TP returning would be very weird to me. I don't personally miss it. It'd be a wild and abrupt decision that would cause lots of people to scream and holler and yell. Probably. But then again, what decision wouldn't do that? Are you a, like, unique enemy? Yes. There's just like an aggressive A rank mark over here. Okay. There it is. I know basically nothing about samurai. I'll level it one day, probably. I mean, I have it at 60 because I did try it for a bit. But I don't remember, like, anything about it. Ah, you've come. Heh, Wuklamat wins again. Looks like everyone is here now, so... Greetings, friend. Are you Gerfurler? No, I am not. The High Luminary did, however, task me with providing a lesson on sepulchres to those who came in search of him. Oh, so we were meant to find our way here after all. Are you to tell us who is buried here? No one is buried here in the sense you mean. When a body has served its purpose, we consign it to the flames, then scatter its ashes across the peaks. Gasp. Moreover, we do not conceive of death as others do. For us, a person does not die when their heart ceases to beat, but only when they are no longer born in the hearts of all who knew them. This is why we build our sepulchres before age or mishap claims us, that we might etch ourselves into the living chronicle for all eternity. This grave belongs to a good friend. His mortal vessel ended its journey some years ago, but he lives within me even now. Up there stands my own sepulchre. As long as it exists, so too will I. I will endure in the hearts of those who read my grave glyphs, in the same manner my friend does in mine. Meanwhile, I'm just thinking, it's weird how they gave Paladin a move called Sepulchre in this expansion. Good thing Sucro will be remembered forever because of what's engraved on her hotbar. Has it always been thus for your people, this conception of existence and death? Continue along this path to the indelible passage. Behold the history upon its walls, and you may find the answers to your questions. Then that's what we'll do. Your traditions are fascinating and I'd love to know more. Nod. Group nod. I thank you for allowing me to share them, for in doing so, I will remain in your hearts also. Nod. It might be. Meanwhile, a bear has sold for 9,000 gil. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Okay, there it is. Whoop. Ow. I didn't think that drop was steep enough. Go now to the indelible passage. In its murals is the history of my people laid bare. Oh, hey. These pillars are remarkably similar to the ones in the city, in a way. Well, maybe not so much when I get closer to them. But they do remind me of them a little bit. Like the ones with all the story carved into them. They're arranged in a similar way, even. Perhaps Galul Jaja was inspired by them. Or hired them. That's also possible. This is the indelible passage. It is our duty to safeguard the murals left behind by our ancestors, and we take many measures to ensure the beasts of the wild cannot draw near them. I've been waiting for you. To not only be remembered, but to live on inside the hearts of others. If it's possible, then grandfather surely lives on inside mine. 'Tis a comforting thought. Look at these splendid murals. They appear to depict 4 different scenes. Oh, I didn't look up. I'm sure we'll learn more about this in a moment, with better camera angles and such. I get the feeling they were expecting us. That's funny paired with the "I've been waiting for you" dialogue. I've never spoken with the Yakui before, and I had no idea they held such a philosophy on life and death. Even Erenville is learning. Hello, a fellow we met at Proof suggested that we come here. Yes, the High Luminary commanded that I watch for your arrival. As the chroniclers of our people, it has ever been my family's duty to pass on the teachings of the murals from generation to generation. I didn't even think of that. That it'd be more difficult to see it at night. They really are magnificent, and together they tell the tale of your people's history. They are the events which shaped us. I would share them with you ere you continue on your way. Please, we would love to hear all about it. Then I will begin. This first mural depicts a time more than 1100 years ago, an age of great prosperity for the Yakhui. Blessed with size and strength unmatched by other peoples, our ancestors marched forth and brought much of Yaktural under their dominion. Then, when all before them had been conquered, they turned their gaze northwards, seeking to expand their territory and power. Here we see the expedition to Jaktural. Unable to cross the strait by ship, our forefathers set to building a bridge to the northern lands, a grand labor which consumed the greater part of a century. Sorger the Boundless. We still make use of that bridge in Tuliolol for travel. I can't imagine the patience and dedication it took to complete a work of that scale. But I've never heard of any Yakhui living in Jaktural. What happened to the ones who went north? Look upon this next mural and behold the answer. This scene suggests that many giants perished all at once. But what manner of enemy could have repelled their invasion? A foe unnamed and unseen. When the expedition pushed forth into Jaktural those 1,000 years ago, its soldiers were felled by disease. Also, that is a fascinating point. Given, like, the culture, the bridge probably is him. That's probably absolutely true and really cool. Some terrible illness? No virulent plague or newly arisen blight. For the local Tanawata and Chitona, it was but a mild affliction of the sort that comes with the turning of the seasons. What manifested for them as slight fevers and coughs, however, proved deadly to our people. 1 out of every 10 Yakhui who joined that northern campaign, or out of every 10 Yakhui, 9 succumbed to the infection. Those who survived continued to suffer, finding it difficult to sire offspring. I've heard of this before. Lacking an inherited resistance, visitors to distant lands can fall deathly ill to diseases a local might shrug off. These events might also have given rise to the practice of cremation rather than the burial of mortal remains. This final mural depicts the return of our grieving brethren to Urkopacha. The reason they first left, why they had fought so long and pushed so far, was to ensure peace for our homeland. This undertaking began in ancient times, when our forebears learned they shared the continent with peoples unlike to us in appearance or custom. They feared invasion was inevitable. Rather than meekly await their fate, they decided to strike the first blow. Yet as they fought on, the old idea of peace drifted further and further away. Did Ascians set this up again? Or is this just a thing that also happened for Garlemald, kind of? Because there's definitely a parallel here. Only after the disaster in Jaktural and their withdrawal to the mountains did they come to understand. The peace we envisioned had been ours for the taking all along. It was here, in the place which birthed us. Here, in the stones upon which we recorded our days. Here, in this tranquil life we had traded for conquest and conflict. People do that without Ascians in reality, that's very true. Also, that's also true. They weren't responsible for the Alphatron star. I forgot that also is a parallel. I'm just always suspicious that there might be Ascians hiding around the corner giggling to themselves, that's all. Even now. It's not that everything is a conspiracy, it's that the Ascians are always conspiring. When you do nothing but fight, it can blind you to what's right before your eyes. Templates like that are forbidden. Yes, good. Yukari is fooling around again. And so we return to the present. I trust you found this brief history of our people enlightening. Nod. I'm always glad to learn more about my fellow Turali, how you've lived until now, and how you wish to live from now on. Then I believe you are ready to proceed. The High Luminary bids you meet him upon the summit of Workorzormur. I had a feeling we'd end up scaling that big old mountain. Well, it's a feat worthy of the name. Follow the trail south of here to begin your ascent, but be wary. Beyond the entryway, the mountainside is home to ferocious beasts, both mundane and otherwise. At least 3 of them are boss fights. The rest of them travel in packs. There will also be scattered treasure chests for some reason. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you for the warning and the lesson. Finally, we know where we're going.
Workorzormur.
True. To the top of Workorzormur. Group nod. Yeah, I think I was already aware that this was Dungeon 2 somehow. Hold on, let me step over here to map the region. Oh. This is actually a very small, like, enclosed space. That I didn't expect. The chocobos are moving. I don't even remember why I know that that's Dungeon 2. But I think it's the dungeon that was present in the benchmark. I really like how there's snow in these regions. Like, it makes sense because of the mountains, but it's really easy to, like, forget that there would be snow here for some reason to me. Because it's not covered in it, probably. I just really like it. It might be the promotional site that mentioned it somewhere. Something like that, yeah. Is that another mark? Sure is, Queen Hawk. Alright. I just keep being adjacent to, like, A-rank hunting marks or whatever. Somehow. Oh no, one of the birds evaporated. That bird lost. Ah, there's thunder outside. Hopefully the power doesn't go out at any point. Oh, I didn't, like, map this. There we go. Oh. There's also, like, giant fiery claw marks in the mountainside. Is that good? Thanks, Valagarmanda, I guess. Flint. Yeah, fair enough. If I'd known we'd be climbing Workorzormur, I might not have raced up and down all those trails. My feet are killing me. Ugh, this thin mountain air is going to be the death of me. How long have you been standing there? I was just taking in the scenery is all. Come on, we don't want to fall too far behind Alphino and the others. They sure do. I fear I won't be much use to you as a guide past this point. Even in Tuliolu, there is precious little written about the sacred peak of Workorzormur. Beyond whimsical poetry, that is. I cast a rejuvenating spell on Wuklamat. Even our indomitable third promise is feeling the strain of these slopes. The true size of a mountain is never more apparent than when you're standing right at its foot. Now that Kryle's a Pictomancer, she knows all about perspective. Wait, was there a spell called Refresh at any point in this game? I hope we come across Bakul Jaja on our way to the summit. We still owe him for the troubles he caused us in Kozama-uka. You remember how the chronicler was saying that the more they fought, the further away they moved from their idea of peace? It occurs to me that if Zeral Jah is attempting the feat of proof, then he will have heard that same lesson. I can only hope that it's made him reconsider his own stance on educating people through war. It hasn't. I can all but guarantee that. The High Luminary. He's called the High Luminary because he's really high up on a mountain. I get it.
God, that is one tall mountain. And we're supposed to climb it?
Farther. Komar. Tuliorlu. Korogar.
Unexpected. Do not expect to walk here unchallenged. Tell me, stunted ones, did those short legs bring you all the way from Tuliolu?
He's speaking the old Yokhui tongue. The words are difficult to catch.
Okay, it is being addressed that not everyone understands this.
Though your words are crude and cumbersome, I use them for your benefit. You are a claimant in this right of succession.
That's right.
Then, if you die, Tuliola loses a potential ruler.
That's a dark thing to say, friend. I get the feeling you don't share the opinions of the other Yokhui we've met.
We do not grovel before Gulul Jaja like those shameless lapdogs. My brethren and I are conquerors, and we will restore our people to their rightful place as Tural's overlords.
Ah.
The Giants have their own factions too, it seems.
Yeah, they really do.
You think your kin weak for showing deference to my father, but they do not follow the man. It is his peace they respect, a peace they always wanted, which they realized could be had right here.
Justifications of the craven. They turn their gaze from our ancestors, from the dream we kept alive for 1,000 years and more. They are unworthy of bearing our legacy. I will reclaim the glory of our people. And our ascension begins with the death of the third promise.
Stop! I don't want to fight you!
Then die on your knees.
Damn. Hell of a cool line there, at least. You've made the bird mad. Get obliterated by this bird.
Opportunistic vermin seek to feast on us, do you? Get down here. Your neck will be the first I snap this day.
That's right.
Yep, this is a bingo square, I think. This might count. This counts as Wuklamot versus a bird, I think. Especially because that bird's probably one of the bosses in the upcoming dungeon.
Why do you help us?
I didn't put much thought into it. My legs were moving before I knew what was happening. I suppose I feared you'd die before we had the chance to get to know each other. Before I could learn more about you.
To what end?
Oh, that's simple. If we're to share the land, it's the best way for us to become friends. How is he?
He'll live. Not quite ready to walk under his own strength, however.
If you could stay and tend to him, the rest of us will continue on to Wokor Zormor.
Understood.
Nod.
Be careful up there.
This changes nothing. We will not forsake our conquest.
As you like. You want to kill me, you're welcome to try. But right now, you might want to worry about your comrade.
On a mountain of that size, there are bound to be creatures even I've never heard of. I'll trust you to lead the way.
Wuklamot is great.
Then we climb. Grufurlor is waiting.
The people who complain about Wuklamot are incorrect. I saw one thread title that I did not investigate further that is also probably wrong, that claimed Wuklamat was done dirty, quote unquote, by the English localization and voice acting. Or voice direction, they said specifically, which is different from voice acting. I have no idea what they were on about, but there were like 500 replies. They said voice direction and not voice acting, which is more specific. But yeah, probably transphobic. Anyway, bingo. Gotta open the bingo. I didn't click on that because it was also marked spoilers, and I also probably shouldn't be reading people being overly negative all the dang time. But anyway. Wuklamat versus a bird. But I will again say they said voice direction and not voice acting, which is notably different, but I don't know what that means, and they are probably still transphobic. Oh, this was just Final Fantasy XIV's main Reddit. I wish there was a way to like delete Reddit, or at least prevent myself from accessing Reddit in any way, but I don't know of such a thing. Anyway, bingo. Wuklamat versus a bird, official. So the middle horizontal now only requires us to see Galuf Baldessian and see an enemy or boss that uses Odin's skeleton. It could happen. Probably further north, we'll see like Techno Horse or something, I don't know. As I've said before, when does this bingo end? Good question, because it could continue through point X. I didn't really think about it. It's just a thing that's here for fun. As I've said before, I am no fighter. I'll follow from a distance and keep well out of your way. Release of the next expansion. Well, we might get every square if we do that. If it runs long enough to cross into the field operation, there's a 100% chance of Odin's model. Yeah. That's probably true. Well, I don't mind guarding Erinville on the river. I look forward to swinging a blade on the front lines this time. That bird must roost somewhere on the mountain. We'll need to be wary of the skies as well. We'll be seeing you soon, Gerfurler. Well, before we do that, right before a dungeon is always a good spot to do this. Yeah, I went for a bingo that was, like, feasible. I'm not the sort who makes a bingo before every Nintendo Direct that's like, new 3D Mario. New Zelda starring, Sheik. I don't know. People are like, there's gonna be a new F-Zero this time, everyone. I know it. It's all of my bingo squares. My bingo just says F-Zero on every space. Going all in on F-Zero. Someone did that, probably. One of these days, F-Zero or Star Fox. Maybe. But anyway, let me flip a coin. Prediction? F-Zero Star Fox crossover? That already happened. That's one of the endings of Star Fox Command. It's not really a full crossover because it's just one of the endings of something, but you know, there's already precedent for it. Oh, you didn't know? Star Fox Command has all sorts of weird endings, and one of them is essentially F-Zero Like, Fox retires and becomes an F-Zero pilot or something like that. And also, yeah, F-Zero has James McCloud in it as some guy who's not related to Fox's dad. Let's see. Prediction. Start prediction. This or that? Oh, you're playing Terraria and building not just the hell houses? Good job, thank you. I appreciate it. And now I will BRB.